end such diversities and trample on such ethnicities and their ancient cultures and the diversity that they bring. Our own neighbors, Pakistan, had federally administered tribal areas, FATA they are called, but they come under the Frontier Crimes Regulation legal framework. So it's seen as crime regulation rather than something to thrive and flower in the diversity of the nation. Our neighbors again, Bangladesh, has something better, but I think very much taken from the example that India set. Though late, after a lot of disputes and discords, the Chittagong Hill Tract got their CTA or Chittagong Hill Tract Accord in 1997, which are almost identical to what the 6 scheduled autonomous councils have. They have a concept of autonomous councils and the protection it will give to their land, forests and rights of the indigenous people. So although lots of disputes still remain there because not much of the accord has been fulfilled, but India stands out as a lighthouse that way for its diverse ethnicities with its 6th schedule provision. Now its relevance to the world. I, as an environmentalist, got connected with the movement for demand of 6th schedule in Ladak, not as much from the political perspective, which is what it is in a big way, to give rights to the indigenous people, or even cultural perspective, which is to keep the diversity in traditional customs and ways of life, which are all very beautiful. But more than that, I have connected to it as a great solution for ecologically sensitive zones of India, the Himalayas, and perhaps the world. I have always thought and said, you can look up my social media posts as we did our Padayatra recently. All along the way I was talking about how such provisions of our constitution that helps the indigenous tribal communities to make decisions about their own region, about their own affairs, is the only way you can protect the fragile ecologies in these very sensitive zones like Hindu Kush, Himalayas and Northeast. These are very fragile ecologies, and such provisions that strengthens the local people, local indigenous people in this case, can be a great help in maintaining these ecologies. Now, I was thinking as I was walking and making these posts about its importance so that people all over the nation and the world can understand the importance of such a provision that helps the indigenous people living in the Himalayas, and they in turn help protect the ecology that feeds the whole nation. Our water depends on Hindu Kush Himalayas. 2 billion people of the world, most of them in the northern part of India and southern China and Tibet, depend on these mountains and its glaciers and its fragile ecology for their water. That is 1/4 of the population of the world. And to keep it, the best stewards will be the local indigenous peoples who have kept it alive for thousands of years and who are so invested, as they'll be here for many centuries or millennia. So they have a direct stake in keeping the region thriving as compared to people who cannot connect to the local ecology here, who are sent on assignments of 2 to 3 years, like bureaucrats who come and manage, for example, Ladak's affairs right now. There are no democratic fora in Ladakh, no assembly, councils, yes, but we have no lawmaking powers because it's not in 6th schedule. So therefore, it's all run by bureaucrats on 2 to 3 years assignments. With all goodwill for them, it's very difficult for them because best of them will make mistakes in a place that they don't understand, in a culture that they don't understand, and in such a sensitive eco-zone, they'll make mistakes. And worst of them may enter into deals that the local people will suffer the consequences for many generations. Similarly, like bureaucrats, you may have corporates that enter. They may be for a longer period than 3 years, but that's a bigger problem because they will look at nothing but maximizing their profits. It's not, as I heard in the morning, that we use resources, you cannot use our resources. We use resources like birds on a tree. The tree doesn't die. Indigenous people, the way they use resources. But when a mechanized, organized, large multinational corporate comes, they suck the mountains of all it has for 10 to 15 years and then they throw it. The same use and throw culture that is invading our country coming from the west. So with this approach to Himalayas, we can't be arguing who's doing what because all of us are going to die. Our civilization is going to die when all the glaciers are melted. There won't be anything that you will see except in monsoon. And what you will see in monsoon will not be water, it will be floods that will further kill you if you're not already dead with the drought of the springtime. So that's what will become if we meddle too much with the Himalayan ecology and the cultures and the rights of the people who have taken stewardship of these Himalayas for millennia and hopefully for millennia to come. So that's how I have always connected to the 6th schedule. Many people ask me, you are talking about climate change, climate fast, ecology and environment. What does it have to do with 6th schedule? I'm sure our forefathers, when they instituted this provision in the Constitution of India, perhaps didn't think about ecology or climate change. They thought of the rights and the cultures. They were very generous for the times. Because they didn't have the problems that we have today, they didn't think of. But if you look at today, if you look at 2024 in the 21st century, what we used to back then call development, modernization, progress, is under a huge question mark, if not downright rejection. It's facing a kind of midlife crisis because what the West thought that they have found the way is actually ending the whole planet where we are supposed to live. Not exactly the planet will go on, but our life on the planet. Today, the air is not worthy of breathing, the water we have is not worthy for our children to drink, this land you couldn't hardly touch in urban areas, industrial areas, and the imminent crisis that climate change will usher us in is just unthinkable. What all will happen from here now as we pay the price of what we call development and progress in the past centuries. So therefore, today it's a very different world, and yet what our forefathers did 75 years ago, as Kardiang Long celebrates, and I wanted to congratulate you all for that. What they did back then is a great solution to what we are facing today. While I was thinking of this and was expressing through my writings and speeches, I felt very happy 2 weeks ago to see that the world has acknowledged the same in a huge way, parallelly, nothing that I have contributed to that. Just to quote you here, 2 weeks ago, a very important COP summit ended. This is COP 16, a little different from the COP 29 that will happen. UN Conference of Parties meeting in Colombia on biodiversity. And the beautiful thing that I saw and felt happy and would like to share with you today, the main outcomes, the resolutions of that was what they called a benchmark for the world. The UN spokesperson says, this is an unprecedented occasion in history of multilateral environmental agreements. Okay, spokesperson says. Now what is it? I'll just say. Agreement was reached after lengthy debates and discussions at the close of COP 16, giving indigenous peoples, that is tribal peoples as we call it in India, their communities recognition as the protagonists of biodiversity and conservation, while also deciding to create a subsidiary body for them under the Article 8J of the Convention. So now the entire world is connecting, safeguarding and protecting indigenous people to environment and climate change. Through this we can see, and yes, we should all celebrate this with a great applause for the world leaders who went and connected the two when I was being questioned, how do you connect 6th schedule with environment and climate change? So now you can take it as a common knowledge that we can start from and take advantage of this approach and argument when we have talks on further strengthening rather than diluting such provisions. For me, it's not just some groups in Northeast and Ladak, because I come from there, that should get such decision-making autonomy for their own environment. I feel the entire world will take care of the planet only if each region has some autonomy, has some say in how their region and their ecology is managed. even not just in Ladakh or Northeast, but I feel all the states should have more autonomy in keeping who they are, what they are, being diverse and distinct, and yet coming together to build a beautiful nation. Anekta mein ekta. So I always say, लद्दाख की लद्दाखियत के लिए तो हम 6 शेड्यूल बोल रहे हैं, मगर मैं तो चाहूंगा कि पंजाब की पंजाबियत रहे, बंगाल की बंगालियत रहे, कश्मीर की कश्मीरियत रहे, और फिर हिंदुस्तान एक खूबसूरत बगीचा बन के दुनिया के आगे